In most video games, the enjoyment comes from being in control of what's happening on the screen. Press this, jump over those, watch out for that, higher scores, more levels, quick reactions, stimulus overload. And then a game like Far Lone Sails comes along and, like a breath of fresh air, reminds you that sometimes it's nice to just sit back and enjoy the ride. Far Lone Sails is a side-scrolling adventure about a small, red-hooded figure all alone in a barren, colourless wasteland. After opening on a somber little scene that sets the tone of the story, you're left with nothing else other than the ability to traverse across the world from left to right, piecing together subtle clues as to who you are and what's happened. And as you scuttle across the bottom of the screen, you're dwarfed by a giant backdrop that paints a picture of this empty world. It's slow going to begin with, and the lack of any narration or cutscenes might put some people off, but it's hard to resist that draw of what might just be around that next corner, or across that corner. Luckily, it's not long before you encounter your main mode of transport, a giant steampunk land yacht. Climbing on board, you're presented with a few switches and buttons that allow you to load fuel, start the engine, and drive the hulking machine off across the dried up sea. And while you are still simply heading across a 2D plane, there is a wonderful feeling of freedom as you finally set out on your adventure. You will need to constantly be managing the motorized machine by holding down the ignition button, releasing steam as it builds, even stopping to pick up and load fuel found along the way. It's a fun little juggling act, but it does quickly become repetitive. And if it wasn't for the mystery of what lies ahead, mechanically, I would say this is a big problem with the game. However, every so often you'll encounter an obstacle that requires you to hop out and do a small bit of puzzling to continue onwards. They're not overly difficult, and they serve to break up the pace of the journey. And in some cases, you'll gain a much needed upgrade to your land yacht. Like, say, something to ease the pressure of maintaining a steam engine. I don't know, maybe some sails. Suddenly, I was free of the burden of dealing with an engine. Now I could simply drop sails, climb atop my machine, and watch the world roll by, soaking in the vistas as the soundtrack swells. It's all quite breathtaking. These wonderfully idle moments come and go as your adventure continues. Eventually the wind does die down and you're forced to restart the engine. But it's how these two modes of transportation are cleverly used throughout the story to highlight moments of happiness and sadness, light and dark, despair and hope. Other traditional, more gamey elements do eventually make their way into this experience. Like extra add-ons to your vehicle to help with things like picking up fuel, or dealing with the inevitable breakdowns. And the puzzles do increase in difficulty as you encounter more memorable set pieces, but fortunately they never distract you from that main goal of pushing onwards towards an unknown destination. It was this overwhelming sense of curious mystery and fateful exploration that kept me sailing through right to the end. It is worth mentioning that the whole journey only took me around 3 or so hours, which some might consider short, but in my opinion was just right. Similar to titles like Journey and Unravel, this is a beautifully emotive adventure that can be appreciated and enjoyed by almost everyone. And while it can be tricky to turn off that part of your brain that's constantly wanting to interact with everything or expecting something bigger around the next corner, when you finally do, you'll appreciate those quiet moments even more. Sometimes it's nice to just spend time with a game that leaves room to breathe, room to think, and Far Lone Sails is one such game. I'm giving it 4 out of 5 rubber chickens.